Cheers. Alright, you bastards. This is Some-Belgian-prepper, and before we're going to talk about sea survival, and it's going to be a multiple part series because it's going to be such much things to talk about and topics. But before we start, if you're interested into detective stories, this is the first part of an 11-part detective series. If you're interested, look into the description down below. It's in Dutch, it's called Bloody Crosses, and it's the first part. But let's get on with the video. Recently, I've been to Scotland, and I took the ferry from the Netherlands to Scotland. And the thing is, it made me think. I've been watching all the things that I've learned in case something would happen. What are the chances that something happened? Not big enough to make you worry. Most accidents are big news because they rarely happen. But just in case, I find it always interesting to learn on how you can survive, what are the things you need to watch out for, and that's why I'm going to start with this series about sea survival. It's going to be in several parts, and the first part is what to do if before you get on board, and the safety procedures that you can do as a regular regular passenger onto the ship. This is the first part about this, and yeah. So what can you do before you get on the ship? My advice is always before you get on the ship, get your paperwork in order. You don't want to get standing at the. You don't want to stand at the how do you say this border guards, and then at the entry of the ship. So get your papers in order, your identity papers, your travel papers, your tickets of the boat, and other documents like vaccination, perhaps some other reports that you need to get in order before you can get onto a ship that will go into international waters or towards other countries. So that's the first thing you need to be prepared on the bureaucratic level. So yeah, that's kind of obvious, but a lot of people forget about it or did not get the right papers in order. So yeah, it could be something just as stupid as I know somebody who had to go onto something that will transport them to another country, but because he was from another nationality, he was not in order with his papers while he thought he was in order. So get your papers in order is the first tip. The second thing you can do to secure a safe trip is look at this type of ship that you're going to travel. And I'm talking about not only the type of ship, because some ships are more prone to perhaps wild seas or some man-made problems. So we rode with a ferry, and the biggest worry with the ferry is a rough sea because the ferry is loaded with all these big and small trucks that will need to be balanced. So if somebody did a fuck up, then that ship could be unbalanced, and that could be form a problem into a rough sea. So that's something you can watch out for, and other types of ships. And yeah, if you look at the picture before and the after of the ships that I went to with the ferry, the first ferry was very stable. It was a little bit flatter, lower, so it was better on the waves. But next ship I came back with was a little bit taller, so it had more, or how do you say this, deigning of the waves, and that could be in a too much wild of sea, and with some mismanagement of the balance of the vehicles, turned into a problem. Um, Next thing is, if you're going to book a sea ferry ticket with the company, try to look into the history of the company. I'm talking about look at the record of their perhaps some lawsuits, some safety hazards that they've done in the past. So those are things that are open to the public, and you can check them out before you book a ticket at a certain sea ferry or sea or ship. So yeah, that's something you can try to look out for, because some companies are not have no scrupulous to save on money by to get more money by saving onto safety procedures or men or personnel or sailors or something. So that's something you need to watch out for. The next thing is the risk on the route. I went with a ferry over the channel, which is a very safe route in the world. But there are perhaps some risks that could happen in certain periods of the year, at certain points perhaps. There could be problems with high waves or storms or unexpected storms, storm cells, those sort of things. So watch the weather. So watch for the weather and watch for the sea reports for the day that you travel or you think you're going to travel. So you minimize the risk that you will perhaps get onto a boat during hurricane season or something, or during a storm season or whatever. Those things could happen. Another thing, a risk on the road is in certain parts of the world, or when your country is has some diplomatic problems or is into war with another country or terrorists. Those could be a risk too. Your ship could be targeted by parties like a country that is in war with you, terrorist because of some political ideology, fundamental terrorist, and even pirates in certain areas. But those are very rare, but they are possible. So if you're going to on a trip to a certain route with a certain ship, try to look out for those things if you think that a ship is your choice of travel. um, Next thing is try to look what kind of route it is on how many ships there are, because the channel was a very very busy sea route. So when there is too much mist and some equipment is faulty, or some sailor or some how do you say this? Yeah, sailors or personnel of the ship make a mistake that could enter into a collision on very busy routes. It could be something like several factors that play into one and could turn into collision, because, like I said, the channel was very busy, and even at night, everywhere around us, we could still see ships like between 10 to 20. Uh, so those are things that could happen. Um, if you're going to enter a ship, I would advise to take a good look at the route, because if the ship is going has some problems at a certain time period, you can estimate it perhaps. The ship is sinking, and you need to get to perhaps dry land. You can calculate where you're about, and try to, if you're on a life raft or something, then you can try to reach the closest land. But if you do not don't, no, no, if you do not know there is land or something else that you can get into safety, try to look for it, and perhaps it could help you in the worst case scenario. I'm talking about pieces of land, small islands, artificial islands, oil rigs, sandbanks. Those are all things that could be around on the certain sea route. So yeah, it's always knowledge is power, and I know this all sound paranoid, but yeah, a warned man is equal to two, and knowledge is power, like I said. So those things could not happen, could not hurt, and it could be interesting for your fellow passengers so you can talk about it. Um, the next thing is, because learn the procedures of the ship. The thing that I noticed of the safety procedures, and these are the things that you can just as a regular person just watch, and you don't have to bother with it anymore. But these are the things you should know about if you're going to travel on a journey on the sea. First of all, what is the emergency signal? Because the captain will, like on the plane, make a safety announcement, and he said that if there is trouble, it would be a siren followed by a short siren followed by a long siren, and then announced with what by the captain what the certain problem is, so that you're not being caught by surprise because you think they're announcing another bingo night or something on the ship, which by the way happened. And yeah, that you do not panic for no good reason. And next thing of the safety procedures here, inspect the deck for hazards. I'm talking about if you're on the deck of the ship, and if you look where are the potential hazards on the stairs, a wet deck, perhaps some holes that you can slide off ship, if it's too slippery and too much water or too high waves, those things could happen. So I would advise to keep an eye out for those. So for those hidden hazards, I would say. Next thing is passengers. If there is a risk of some shady persons like terrorists, criminals, uh, spies, if you're in a war situation, whatever, um, I would say to look out for your fellow passengers. So if somebody is does something shady, try to tell it to somebody of the working crew, the crew of the ship, so they can investigate it before something bad happened. It's better to be sure that everything was all right with that person, and you will probably feel embarrassed, but that's better than not saying anything because you are afraid that he will think you're a dick and the ship will explode because he planted the bomb or something. So that could be another problem. Next thing is the locations of certain safety equipment. The location of live rats and live pods. You will see them on the pictures that I will show you now if I manage it with the editing. The location of the live buoys um, and the live rings. So if somebody gets over falls overboard, you can throw it, and they will can cling on to make up the signal so that people the crew can lower down a small saving vessel and try to find that person better that way. Next thing, location of the life jackets. Yet again, I will show you in a picture now if my editing skills are anything good. Look out for the location of the fire extinguishers in case there is some gas explosion which could happen in kitchen areas or some pipelines or some other ways that fire started, perhaps a careless smoker, and that way you can put out the fire before the smoke will engulf you and other passengers in very small areas in lower decks that could be very very dangerous. The locations of the emergency and regular exits. So it's not only emergency exits but also just a regular exit. I would say try to memorize those. The layout of the ship is perhaps what I'm trying to say. There are certain places where you need to know where you have to go to assembly for the life rafts in case the captain announced that everybody has to abandon ship, and that way you will know where you have to go. That you do not, while the ship is sinking, walking around 30 minutes, because a ship could be inside of a ship could be a very big maze, especially when there is smoke, panic, stress, and you will there is no other point of navigation that you can do except perhaps some signage that could be darkened because the electricity could fall out, and you will only have the light of your cell phone. That could also be a very big problem. So I would say try to look out for those. Try to remember a little bit of the. Well, I don't know. I don't say you have to do it blindly, but a little some sort of navigation points could be handy. Like if you know that over there is the lounge area, you will know. I have to go that way to get upstairs. So that could be very better to know in case of a worst case scenario. Like I said before, try to learn the maps of the ship. Everywhere on the ship there should be a map with evacuation routes and just a regular map with the layout of the ship. I would advise to take a picture like I did of the ship layout map. So in case it's getting dark, I can still navigate with the light of my cell phone and the picture at the same time to get off the ship, and that could be life saving in a worst case scenario. And my last tip is don't worry too much. People who It's like people who go into a plane who have fear of flying. There are certain people who are going to an open ocean on a ship and they feel trapped, they feel scared, and they have seen Titanic way too many times. Those things could happen, and I would say just relax. The chance that something happens is very small, but if they happen, you at least will be a little bit prepared, and in the best case scenario, you could help other people. Because remember, I don't I don't say that you will only have to do this for yourself, but it could also help save other people's or help other people who are less prepared. So we do not prepare only for ourselves, but also for our fellow human. So I would say subscribe. I would really appreciate it. Thank you for watching. Like, tell me if you have ever uh, gotten through something like certain scenarios, a certain ship that made people panic, and how did it solved. I would love to hear tips that I perhaps forgotten. This is just the first part, so remember that. If you're interested into a detective story, this is the first part of a series in the description. Um, and yeah, thank you for watching, and see you in the next video. Cheers.